do this. So this is great if you want to learn how to build experiments and host them on the web. And this will be a really exciting workshop for us. Did we just lose Stephen? Oh no, okay, we lose Billy. Cool. It's like someone important disappeared. But Stephen, I'll let you take it away from here.
Cool. Are we good to record it?
Yes, we are recording.
Okay, cool. Awesome. So I'm going to share the screen really quick and then we can go from there. What's happening? Okay. Can everyone see the PowerPoint? Cool. So this is like basically the video that I made, but the video is like 10 minutes long, maybe way too long. I just wanted to have that as a resource for people who later access the workshop and can go back to it and need some more detail. But I kind of went into this workshop with the understanding that a lot of people work primarily in Python or R or MATLAB and may feel a little bit antsy or not great about JavaScript. So I'm going to try to start off with like an introduction to JavaScript and HTML and CSS, which are like 3 different languages, but jsPsych basically leverages them together to create these experimental tasks. And I know like saying those 3 languages can feel a little bit overwhelming, but I'm hoping to break it down one dimension at a time. And hopefully it makes sense. So please, actually, if you have any questions as things go on, don't hesitate to jump in for sure. Cool. Oh. So some objectives for today's workshop is to just start off with an introduction to jsPsych. Just really quickly consider like why jsPsych, right? There's other task development programs like PsychoPy, Psych Toolbox. So just consider some pros and cons of using jsPsych. And then like I just mentioned, we're going to learn how to integrate JavaScript, HTML, and CSS to build a jsPsych experimental task. So really quick, HTML is basically the code that's used to like structure a web page. CSS, it's what's used to like customize elements that appear on the web page. So that's like font size, font color, the background of the web page, stuff like that, which will be pretty useful for tasks. And then JavaScript is what ultimately makes these web pages interactive. So basically all that jsPsych's doing is like providing a skeleton that lets you map these languages on to certain libraries in JavaScript that we can use to make tasks. And I know that sounds a little bit abstract, but I'm just trying to like preface it and then we'll work through mapping that on. Does this so far make sense to everyone? Am I going too fast or is this a good pace? Cool. So why jsPsych? It is a free and open source software, just like PsychoPy is. A lot of people use jsPsych because it's very compatible for online experiments. And it is, and we'll get into that a little bit more later. I personally think it's a pretty intuitive framework for building experimental trials. And what I'm going to focus on, and something that I was talking to Bushra about, is like once you identify the skeleton of what jsPsych does, because it's a very consistent framework, then you'll be able to map that on to do whatever you want to do. So if by the end of this workshop you understand that framework, I think that is a good thing, I hope. And then there's ample online resources. We'll get to that a little bit later as well. So jsPsych or PsychoPy, this was kind of the question I was asking myself last year because I didn't know either language and I was kind of deciding what to invest my time in. So just some quick differences is PsychoPy is a little bit more Python based. It does have a graphical user interface, which is the builder, and a coding interface, which is coder. Susan Benier has a really helpful COG workshop on the builder. I think it was last year or 2 years ago. Definitely. I think it was 2 years ago in 2021. So check that out. And then Liz Beard has a coder workshop on PsychoPy Coder. This was last year. So I recommend checking those out if you're interested in learning more about PsychoPy. Those were both super helpful for me. The thing about online experiments is that in order to do that, you have to have the code in JavaScript. And that kind of makes sense when you go back to like the previous 2 slides and you're like, well, JavaScript's using HTML and CSS. It's loading it on people's web pages, regardless of what computer that they have. So it kind of makes sense that they need to run it in JavaScript. But then that's one thing that's challenging about starting in a different language. But the cool thing about Builder is that it auto converts the code to JavaScript for people who've used Builder before. That makes sense. Now jsPsych is JavaScript based. There is no graphical user interface, unfortunately, only coding, but you're more or less able to automatically upload tasks online. I put an asterisk next to automatically because all you have to do is like tweak the code super minorly, but it's much more straightforward in my opinion to upload it onto Pavlovia. Any questions so far? All good?
So if you have experience with Python,
Mhm.
would you say it's easier to use CyclePy?
That's a really good question. I think in the context of you already knowing the language, CyclePy, either builder or coder would be a good candidate. It's more like what kind of flexibility do you need and want for your tasks? My
Right.
understanding of CyclePy is that it is much harder to convert the code encoder from Python to JavaScript because you have to do that all manually. So you can see a world where you're basically writing two scripts. Whereas if you want to use like Python Builder has the GUI, so you don't need as much code per se. But if you want to add little tweaks to use like code components, that might be a good fit. It's just kind of determined by what kind of goals you have for your task. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Yeah, thanks.
No problem. And then both of them are free and open source. They both support online experiments, ample online resources, and both have user communities. Cool. So in terms of what we're going to do today, we're going to set up a JSPsych script in Visual Studio Code, which is like the text editor that we'll use for the purposes of this experiment. We'll start learning how to integrate JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. And then we're going to build a full experiment. It's going to be a two-part task. In part one, we're just going to show pictures of animals to participant and have participants rate how much they like them on a scale of 1 to 7. Then part two will be kind of like a memory test. We're just going to show the name of the animal that we showed the image of before, and we're just going to ask people to freely recall as much as they can remember about the animal image. And like, who cares about that? Will that ever be a task? Probably not. But I think the idea of like showing an image to someone and then asking someone to recall it like via text is something that may generalize to a lot of people's interests, which was kind of my rationale for using that. And that'll include stimuli presentation, collecting participant responses, using CSS to customize task aesthetics, and randomizing experimental trials. So to get started, just maybe a quick check-in. Does everyone have the materials gathered for the workshop? Everyone good to go? I'm not seeing any no's. Cool.
Can you say how to download, sorry, can you say how to download the workshop folder again from GitHub?
I think Katie put a link in the chat. If you click on the link, it'll bring you to that main GitHub page, and there should be a green code button, like on the right-ish. And then you should just download the whole zip folder.
Yeah, it should be like, it's the only like green thing on that link that I just sent, so it should be pretty easy to see. And like it says code, but if you click on the drop down, you'll be able to see where to download the
Okay.
zip file. Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, and then it'll be like, so it'll be in the file that you download, but it'll be like a couple files in because it's like the whole
Got it.
GitHub.
Thank you.
Of
Yeah.
course.
Thanks.
Okay, let me share the screen. So again, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but like today's going to be focused mostly on just kind of learning JavaScript, HTML, CSS in the context of JSPsych. And I know a lot of people are interested in JSPsych because it is compatible with online experiments. I'm not going to focus on that too heavily here, just because I think it's like opening up a can of worms and getting into Pavlovia and GitHub and all that stuff. But I do include a script that is the index HTML file in that JSPsych workshop folder is the online version of our script. And in the outro PowerPoint, I include slides discussing the tweaks that I made to the script to make it compatible for online experiments, just so that you have that as a resource. Cool. Everyone good to go? Is this a chat? Was this you, Katie? Yeah. So we're going to start off with just setting things up in Visual Studio Code. So can everyone see my screen? If you can just navigate to the jsPsych workshop folder, or I guess the first thing to do if you haven't done it already is move the jsPsych folder that you downloaded from that dis archive zip file and move it into the jsPsych workshop folder, just so that you have that. And then if you do have that, all we're going to do is open up the jsPsych workshop folder in the Visual Studio Code editor. And let me know if you have any questions about this, because I recognize it might be a new software for a lot of people.
Wait, do you mean that we move the contents of the workshop folder into JSPsych or
No, the opposite way. So when you download the zip archive folder, it should have like a disk folder, and then in that folder should be JSPsych. Does everyone see that folder? All you're doing is moving that JSPsych folder to the JSPsych workshop folder.
oh,
That makes
okay.
sense?
Did you already have that downloaded into that file on the GitHub?
Which one? Me?
Yeah, because inside the JSPsych workshop there is.
No. I
Okay.
didn't. I just because I thought it'd be helpful to like learn how to pull the releases from JSPsych because
Oh,
that's how you're gonna have to do it.
okay, cool.
So a quick one, please.
Yeah, what's up?
Hey, so the one I think I downloaded is the COG Summer Workshop, the whole thing.
Mhm.
Yes.
What I was supposed to download.
Yep. And then
Okay,
if you yeah, sorry, go.
okay, so yesterday I had downloaded JSPsych separately. So I have two folders staring at me now, JSPsych and then this other COG Summer Workshop folder. But when I click on the COG Summer Workshop, I see there is JSPsych in there. Are you suggesting that we do what now, please?
Yeah, so then you go into that JSPsych folder that you talked about, and you should see a JSPsych workshop folder.
Mhm,
See
mhm,
that?
mhm.
Then you want to move, sorry, I guess the names didn't help for this workshop, but like the JSPsych folder that you downloaded from the dist zip file, you want to move that JSPsych folder into the JSPsych workshop folder, which should exist within the TU COG JSPsych folder.
So it's JSPsych workshop, and then
Yeah.
inside of that, add the JSPsych one you just downloaded.
So when you click on JSPsych Workshop, you have, say, two folders here, another JSPsych Workshop in that folder.
In
And
the JSPsych workshop folder, like JSPsych underscore workshop.
There, Joseph's right though. In that, there is another folder called JSPsych underscore workshop.
Oh yeah, I didn't know why that happened. I thought that was like a GitHub thing.
It could be that it's fine. We can correct that later. But so either way, I think we want to move the JSPsych folder into that second JSPsych workshop
Yeah.
folder. Is that correct, Stephen? Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, it's fine. So wait, I'll add the file path in the chat just to avoid confusion.
I think that happened because it was a zip file and it was unzipped, and we might not have. It might have been my fault. I think I might have uploaded it
It's okay.
unzipped incorrectly on that.
Yeah, so that's kind of what you'll see in the file path relative to the workshop. It'll be JSPsych, JSPsych workshop, JSPsych workshop, JSPsych. Sorry about that, everyone. And then Stephen, we're going to open the bottom layer, the JSPsych folder in VS Code, right?
Nope, just the JSPsych workshop folder. And then I
Just
have
the
a
okay.
picture of like what it should look like when you open the folder. You'll see the
Okay.
JSPsych folder, the stimuli folder, JSPsych experiment.
okay, I guess I'm not missing anything if that's all that I should see when I open in Visual Code, Visual Studio Code.
You open the folder,
Mm-hmm.
and what are you seeing?
The same thing as you have on your screen
Right
right
here?
now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That's what we want.
Okay.
Yeah. Is everyone seeing this sort of directory structure in Visual Studio Code? Cool. Are we good to move forward? I don't want to leave anyone behind accidentally. Cool. So the next thing that we're going to do is create an HTML. Oh, this is what I said here. We want to create an HTML file. I know I put here, name it JSPsych experimental, but you can name it whatever you want just because I already put the finished script here. And the way you do that is just to the right of the JSPsych workshop, like header in Visual Studio Code, you should see like a plus sign that says new file. Does everyone see that? All you're doing is you can name it whatever you want and just put .html. Is everyone good with that? No worries if not. Cool. If you're still getting stuck, it's okay. I've been there before. Please speak up. We can definitely sort it out. Cool. So I'm gonna go to step 1. And like, would it be easier if I was like going through the notebook viewer or like writing the code myself? It would be more helpful for everyone.
Yeah, can you please actually open Visual Studio Code?
Yeah. Let me do that. I was trying to think of a way of what's easier.
Do it.
Give me 1 second. Cool. I'm just going to start from scratch with everyone. Okay, so we should all be seeing the same thing. I'm on step 1. I just created a new script called task.html. So this is what I'll work through. And then all I'm doing is copying the code from step 1 in the Temple Notebook viewer from the TU COG page. And what we're doing here is just creating an HTML file. This is just like the skeleton of the code that you need in order to create an HTML file, in order to load a script on a web page. And I won't get into the details just yet, but I'm going to touch on like what these kind of tags mean soon. Does everyone have this code on? Is also everyone able to see like the notebook viewer page? So that's going to be super important.
Yeah. So if you go to this page, I put it in the chat already, but I won't do it again. If you click on this, it should open up in online on Chrome or whatever your default is, and you should be able to see exactly what Stephen was showing us earlier. That's where we're getting all the code and stuff to do this.
Yes. All right, so all I'm going to do now is going to run this script so you can see what it would look like to get in the habit of loading it using a like Google Chrome or a web browser so we can see what it looks like. And all I'm doing here is going to step 2 on the notebook viewer. I'm going to run, start debugging in Visual Studio Code. And then all I'm doing is just clicking my browser. And when you load it, if everyone's done that, you should see a completely blank page and the tab should say My Experiment. Now, why does it say My Experiment?
Because you have that as your title.
Exactly. So you can name it whatever you want. This is just like one example of now we're starting to tweak some things and to have it show up on a web page. Does this make sense to everyone? Cool. So we can exit out of that. Will be the way to run the script is to do what you just did. Start debugging, run, start debugging, and then load it on Chrome. So we'll be doing that as we start building our script. Now I'm going to go back to Visual Studio Code. All right, now we're going to load, we're going to start loading in jsPsych. And the way we do that is using the script tag. So let me maybe load it first, and then I'll go backwards and walk you through what I did. All I'm doing is going into that jsPsych folder that we just moved into the new workshop, and it's going to have a long list of plugins. All these plugins are jsPsych libraries. This is the same thing that you would do for loading a library in R or Python. Now, all I'm going to do is create a script tag right under the title. Equals, I'm going to walk you through all, okay, give me 1 second. All I'm doing is copying the path, which is, where is jsPsych? Oh, right here. You right click it, copy path. I'll do it again. Maybe I went too fast. Copy path. I'm just loading it in between the quotes. And then I am closing it out with this script tag. So I want to pay attention to the script tag because I know it feels super different than what we do, but I like to think of it as parentheses. All you're doing is like basically it's just taking this structure. You can think of it as parentheses. It's a script. You want to put something in the middle, and then it's a script with this slash at the end. And you can see that all of the other tags, this HTML, the body, the head, they all follow that same structure. They have, I don't even know what to call it, the greater than sign, and then the less than sign, and then it has the opposite end of that with just a slash right in between. So that's just an important structure that is consistent throughout everything in JSPsych. And all that I'm doing here is loading the JSPsych software into the script. So this pathway should obviously look different depending on what your computer looks like. Does everyone have this part loaded in? Yeah, cool.
I'm curious, do you know if we need that full, we do need that full path, or because it's sitting in the, like we opened the folder within Visual Studio Code, if it would be okay with just like the,
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm paranoid. I always put the full path,
yeah,
but I don't know if it would work with that. I haven't tested that out.
I'll
I
see.
literally just go to whatever software I need. I copy the path and then I just paste it.
Oh, it did the whole thing. I dragged and dropped, which you can also do, and that just gave like where it was from the folder, which was interesting.
Cool. Well, let's test it out and see if it works both ways.
Yeah.
Cool. So next, we're gonna load the JSPsych CSS style sheet, and it's just gonna be the same way that we did it before, except there are like some CSS specific components. I'm not really gonna get too much into that because you don't need it apart from this section. So let's just like copy it, but we don't have to get into the details of what that means. And again, I'm just copying the path from wherever the package is. And then okay. Does everyone have the CSS style sheet loaded in? Okay, so that was the boring background stuff. Now we're gonna start loading in some of the plugins and start mapping it onto the script. So the next thing that we're gonna do is sort of create a script element that will essentially, we're gonna create a script element which essentially starts off the script, but we also have to basically turn JSPsych on. So the way that we do that is hold on, I'm juggling the notebook viewer right here. Script. And I just do a few indents, and then whatever goes in between these two script tags is what defines the experimental script. Does that make sense? And you can kind of confirm where to put that because the last thing you should see is this HTML that's kind of closing things out. And that makes sense because if you're loading this on the web page, the last thing that should show is the HTML tag. Does anyone have any questions about where to put this, or is this making sense? I need to think of a better way to diagnose if this is making sense or if I'm going too fast.
No, I do have a question, something I hadn't thought about with JavaScript. To what extent does indentation matter?
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter, it's not sensitive, okay.
This helps to be organized, but it doesn't affect the script actually. At least in my experience. Cool.
I have a question.
Yeah, what's up?
What is the link line about?
Yeah, that's like it's something that's specific to the CSS code in order to be able to load the styles that like all that this plugin is doing, this jspsych.css, it's a file that contains the standard styling for JSPsych. So it's like font size is 12, colors black, blah, blah, blah. We're not going to be using this throughout the rest of the script, so I kind of don't want to like talk about it if it's not really going to be necessary or consistent.
Okay.
Just to like save people mental space. Cool. Then the only other thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a variable called JSPsych, and we're going to use the init JSPsych function. Let me write it out first. And all this is doing is initializing JSPsych. It's just turning it on. That's all we're doing. And I'll just copy the comments here. One thing is like hashtags are used in R and Python for comments, but here it's 2 backslashes. So I'm gonna include those comments in case it's helpful for everyone. Cool. So if everyone's good with this, I'm gonna go on to step 7. So understanding what a JSPsych timeline is and how to use it. This part's really, really important. So basically the way JSPsych experiments works is that it's defined by a timeline, which is basically just an array that contains the experimental trials that we want to run as part of the experiment. And in order to do that, you have to start off with an empty timeline array. So I'm going to paste it into Visual Studio Code here. And it's basically just a variable called timeline. It equals, and it's going to be 2 empty brackets. And all that we're going to be doing, this is getting a little bit ahead, is we're going to create an experimental trial. We're going to push it to this timeline, to this empty array so that it's not empty anymore. And then all we're doing is running that experimental timeline. And this will make sense, I hope, as we actually start doing that. Is everyone good on this empty timeline array thing? Cool. I feel like sometimes I've done this and sometimes people go too fast and I'm too scared to say something and then I get lost. So like, I really hope this isn't happening. Please ask if you have any questions. Or also if I'm going too slow, let me know. So now we're going to go to step 8, which is we're going to load a jsPsych plugin to display a welcome message. And in this case, we're going to use the HTML keyboard response plugin. So all we're going to have to do is load that plugin the same way we loaded jsPsych, the software, earlier. So we're going to have to use those script tags. So all I'm doing, because I'm too lazy to manually rewrite this, is I'm just going to copy it. I'm going to find the plugin that I want, HTML keyboard response. And then I'm just going to overwrite it. Does that make sense? I'm going to give you some time to find the plugins because I know there's a lot. It's called the HTML keyboard response plugin. And everyone just give me a thumbs up when they're good on that.
And that's the one allows us to like get the keyboard responses.
Yes, exactly. So if Butcher's totally right, that plugin, that library is going to let us use certain knobs and like parameters to do certain tasks that we want to do. And we're going to build that in the next part. Does everyone have that loaded in?
I do. I have a quick question. So
Yeah.
I just started off by copying what you had in the tutorial.
Yeah.
And I noticed that having a comment at the end of the line colored it differently than a comment if that comment was like on its own line, if that makes any sense.
You're like
oh, sorry, go ahead. What was that?
Are you like which one are you doing? Which one did you paste from? Step 7?
So you had adding the HTML keyboard response plugin here. I was wondering whether or not also in your experience like jsPsych is like sensitive to like adding comments at the end of a line that has code otherwise.
Oh, yeah, I think I did it just for the purposes of this, but like there's different ways to comment it based if you're in the HTML space or in the JavaScript space. And I think because we're in the HTML, I would probably just put that out just to be safe. I don't know if it would mess it up.
Okay.
I can leave it and see.
That's right. I was just curious.
That's a good point.
Billy, I put a comment on my like their timeline line and I put like just a test comment at like the end of that line and that worked as a comment.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll leave mine on just in case. Cool. I'm gonna go to step 8 if that's okay. So what we're gonna do here is we've already loaded in. Cool. So I'm actually gonna go to step 9. Sorry. This is a little bit longer and we're gonna build our first experimental trial. So basically like I'm trying to think of the easiest way to do this. I'm going to create it first and then walk my way backwards and show you what's going on. So all I'm doing here is, I forgot a comma. Creating a variable called welcome. The type is the plugin that we just loaded. This is the name of the plugin that we just loaded. And like, it's kind of annoying the way you find that name is let's say I want to open this up. It's right here at the top, right? But for the purposes of this experiment, you don't really need to know that. But like to find any plugin that you want to use, you just open up that plugin JS file and it has the name right there. So that's how I have the type. Then there's a stimulus, which is just a string that we want to show to participants. I'm just saying, let's put welcome to the experiment, press the space bar to begin. Now this specific parameter plugin, the jsPsych HTML keyboard response plugin, has a choices parameter. And all we're doing for the choice is like, this is the keyboard presses that the plugin will accept as part of the trial. And because we're telling them to press the space bar, we're just putting in quotes and then a space. That's it.
So it needs to be in quotes?
Yep. Just so that it can
Okay.
capture like, well, we want is the space. In the same way that if we wanted to do.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. If it
Right?
was like press C, so it's C in
Yeah.
quotes.
Just like that. And I kind of want to pause here because every plugin has this structure. You create a variable, you call it whatever you want, you do the type, and that's just referencing the plugin that you care about. And then there's usually stimulus, and then like a plugin specific parameter. But each of them are just like these little knobs that you have to turn on and off depending on what you want to do. But we'll keep using this format as things continue. And I'm gonna name mine welcome. Does this part make sense to everyone? Is anyone not at this part? Okay,
Everyone's following along, right?
I hope so.
I'll
I hope
I'll come into your office in Whitehall and get you.
Cool. So I'm gonna go to step 10. Now we're gonna do is add the welcome trial to the experimental timeline. So remember we created this variable called timeline. It was an empty array that we weren't really using before. Now to add this trial to the experimental timeline, we're using a function called the timeline push function. And all that we're doing is including the name of the variable of the trial that we just created. And this will add it onto this empty timeline. So then that's how you see we can start to build our experiment as we continue building trials. Does everyone have the timeline push line written in? Because the next thing we're gonna do is I added one more thing. We can call an audit. I'm gonna ask everyone to run the web page just like we did earlier. Do you remember where it showed just the My Experiment tab? Let's do that again and see what it looks like. Oh, I forgot one more thing. I'm so sorry. Did everyone do that? Don't do it yet. We'll just go with what my notebook viewer said. I'm so sorry. I was trying to skip a step. So I'm gonna go to step 11 if that's all right. What step 11 is doing is it's using this jsPsych data display data function that's useful for debugging your experiment. And basically all that it does is at the end of the experiment, it'll show you all the data that you've collected as part of that experiment. So it's like super useful way to check what data you've actually collected, what data is going to appear in the spreadsheets that you export, and what data you're still missing. So it's super helpful in the context of like task development. So that's kind of why I thought we should add that in first. And all that we're doing is I'm just copying from the step 11, the notebook viewer, is we're just going to overwrite this initialization of jsPsych, and we're going to add this onFinish function, and then add this jsPsych display data function. And all this onFinish function is doing, I'm not going to get into this much detail because again, I don't think we need it besides this part. It's just saying at the end of this, do this. So all that it's saying is at the end of running jsPsych, show us the data that we collected. And that's what this onFinish function is allowing us to do. Does that make sense on like a conceptual level? That's all that's really important. The code itself, we don't really need to worry about. Okay. Now we're gonna go to step 12, and this is the part that I was missing before. This is why if you ran it, it didn't run. You need to use this .run function, put it at the bottom of your script, above, it doesn't matter how many lines, but as long as it's above the script, that script closing, because then that's saying the last thing that we're going to do is run the timeline. And the timeline, what was originally an empty array, because we're using the timeline dot push function, will now only include the welcome trial. Is that making sense to people? That's like a hard kind of sequence of events for me to wrap my mind around, and I want to make sure that's getting across to people.
What I don't understand is why is the timeline one empty up there?
That's a really good question. So basically, because this will give us flexibility in the sense that it's not predefined. Whatever we want to push to the experiment, we can continue pushing as we keep building trials. Does that make sense? Because if you only call this welcome, then it would only run welcome. Whereas if we have like trial 2, trial 3, trial 4, does that make sense? So rather than predefining it, if you make it empty, if you push each trial after you build it, then you have more flexibility for what your experiment could look like.
And if I think also like you need to have some sort of a container basically to keep all these things in there, right, Stephen? So like you need to have something, you don't want that defined, so you just leave it empty to start off, right?
Yep, exactly. It's totally, if it's easier to think about it as like a container, that's exactly what it's doing.
But everything else is everything under it is in timeline because we are calling on timeline to we're running timeline.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it.
Okay.
I don't know if you could name it something else or if it's like an intrinsic JSPsych function, but like the way they do it is calling it timeline. So that's just what I do. Is everyone at this part? Cool. And I think, Billy, you were right that I don't think you should put the code here because I think it was populating on my HTML at least. So I'm going to erase my comment there. I don't know if anyone had it, but now we're good to run the experiment. So let's try doing it again, and it should print out a welcome message. Where am I? Does everyone see the welcome message?
I'm not getting the same error you're getting.
You already have it up. That's my fault. Like, so if you exit out and then redo it, or you can just refresh the page that you already have up. That's my fault. Is everyone getting it, or is anyone getting an error?
I'm not getting the welcome.
Yeah, I'm also getting a blank page.
As well.
I am not, so I'm wondering what I'm
trying to like compare my code to yours.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing, yeah.
Well, my Visual Studio Coder defined 2 problems, it says. An unexpected comma or something.
oh, I forgot.
An expected comma, actually.
Yeah, this was an error in my part that I added. Do you see the stimulus line? There should be a comma after it. I didn't put that in the script by accident, like in the step 9 or step 7 or whatever.
Yeah, I'm gonna add that.
I don't think it's still working.
Let me see.
Is there should there be a comma after I think it's line 27 for you, the choices? I don't know if that
I put a
related
comma
to-
for mine.
Okay.
I don't think it matters actually. Let me try and run it again. Hold on, I'm trying to check in with Boucher really quick. Yeah, it doesn't matter if there's a comma there, only because it's the last parameter.
Okay.
Does random spacing matter between?
Did you just copy that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Could you go to the web page? And then right click it? No, like anywhere on the page. Yeah, and then click inspect. And go to console. Oh, you don't have the plugin loaded. Do you have it loaded? You put image dash keyboard where it's HTML.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, sorry.
No, that's a really good point. And Boujra, let me know when you get that, and then I'm going to walk you through what I just did with Boujra, because what we haven't talked about is what to do when there's an error, which obviously there's going to be. And like in RStudio, it'll print the error, in Python, it'll print the error. But how do you do that on here? And I'm going to show you that in 1 second. You got it? Perfect. You can exit out of that. Yeah, no problem. Cool. So can everyone see my Visual Studio Code?
Yes.
I'm gonna say that this is the wrong plugin. Like this is a different plugin that I'm not using for the purposes of this experiment, right? We're using the HTML keyboard response plugin. So now when I run it, it's not gonna work, but I want to just show you how to troubleshoot that really quick, just so that you have that. We're not gonna get too much into it, but just to show you how to do that. Give me 1 second to load. Let me switch screens. So cool. It's blank, right? Doesn't show the welcome message, but also doesn't give you an error. So that's kind of annoying. Like, how do you know what you did wrong? All the way you do that is you right click it, you go to inspect. I'm going to console.
Oh.
And then it'll give you an error here. It's a little hidden. You have to find it, but it's saying jsPsych HTML keyboard response is not defined. Now, why is it saying that? All that's saying, just because I did it before in Visual Studio Code, is remember I changed the plugin from HTML keyboard response to image keyboard response. It's not recognizing the HTML keyboard response plugin because I didn't load that plugin in. Does that make sense? These are just like specific errors that you'll have to just get the hang of as you become more familiar with it. But this is one way to check. That's kind of as far as we need to get to for the purposes of this workshop. That's when
I got this error.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting as well.
initialize is not defined. Let me check that out.
Yeah, me as well.
You got that as well, Billy?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure it out.
Is this code looking exactly the same?
Let me see.
Yeah,
As
I'm
far
not.
as I can tell, it looks the same.
Do we have jspsych.js loaded in? Change.
I did just try also. I thought maybe doing the objective file path might change, so I did the relative file path, and I'm still getting it. Still getting the error.
Would you mind like sharing the screen, Billy, just so I can like look at it?
Yeah, sure.
At least we're getting the same error.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it this one? Yeah. Cool. So yeah, can you guys see that well?
Mm-hmm.
It's SCR and not SRC.
Oh my goodness.
I had the same exact thing. I just
Right.
noticed it.
What is it?
When it looks like when it's under script and then it's SRC, I had SCR and so did Billy.
Oh, I also have SCR.
All three of us. I'm so impressed.
It's 4. I did the same and then I corrected myself.
There.
Oh.
Okay, mine works now.
Oh,
Is
that's
it
so
working for
silly.
everyone?
Let me see. Yay, yes.
You should just see the welcome message.
I do.
Okay. Sorry that was a little tricky, but hopefully everyone's got it now. The next thing that we're going to do, like this is how you build one trial, right? Now we want to customize the trial. I think a lot of people are going to want to do this. You're going to want to change the font size, font color, stuff like that. So I'm just going to do one little section on how to do that. That's step 14, using HTML and CSS formatting to customize the welcome trial. So to the best of my understanding, the way it works is that you're essentially you're using HTML formatting, but it's CSS that are the knobs that you have to turn to customize what you need to do. So all we're going to do for the purposes of this welcome message is you need to include a this means paragraph, the P, style, equals, and then these are the CSS parameters that we're gonna turn on and off. Font size, I want it to be 40 pixels. The color, I want it to be red. A semicolon after each one to close that off, and then another quote to end it. So it should look like this so far. And then I need to close out the paragraph with the p tag. Oh. Sorry, you have to use different set of quotes so that it like treats it differently. And the good thing is that this is what the color should be if it's good looking right. Oh, I put red, but I want to do blue. Does everyone have this line, or are people still working through it? It's okay. No problem. So like, let's think about while you guys are doing that, like how it looks in terms of like, this is like the start, right? And you can tell it's the start because it has one of these, and then you're closing it out. You're putting the text in the middle here, and then you're closing out the paragraph again. Does that make sense? You're just kind of extending on it to include this style in between before you close it out.
This is actually, it's not that bad.
That's
Like,
kind of what I'm hoping for. I don't feel like I'm doing a great job with it, but I think
no, you're doing a great job. Like, it's not intimidating.
that is good.
And like the language is not that complicated, I feel like.
It's different, but once you understand like the skeleton, like I keep saying, I'm really hoping it sticks. So kind of what I was hoping to do is once everyone has this set, let's rerun it. And if you still have the HTML page open, all you need to do is click refresh. If you don't, if you close it, then you got to reopen it. Thanks, Billy. And I kept mine open, so I'm just going to refresh it, and it should be in bigger blue letters, right? Welcome to the experiment. Press the space bar to begin. So you can adjust this however you want for whatever you need to do. It's kind of pretty straightforward in that way.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
This might also be advanced, we can skip it, but so does this allow you to only like change everything in the same screen, but can you like make changes? Let's say you have like a photo and like different text, but you wanna make the text in different sizes on the same page. Is it possible to do that? Or-
Yeah, there's a way to do that. It's a little bit more advanced, but you have to like essentially tag items of that type with something, and then any customizations that you do are specific to that item. So there is a way to do that. There's a way to put text at the top, at the bottom, in the middle, top left, top right. Like there's whole different ways. I just kind of wanted to keep it a little bit simple for the purposes of this workshop.
Lindsay, did you have a question?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm copying all the code, but whenever I go to run it, it's still blank.
It's still blank.
And so I thought, so then I went to the part where it said like up to here, all your code should look like this, whatever step that was. So I just copy and pasted that, and then I ran it again, and it's still blank.
At this point, you're on step 13. At this point, this is what your code should look like.
Yeah. So
This
I
is-
just thought I would do that. Maybe I did something wrong.
No,
But when
right, this was my fault in the sense that remember I forgot to put a comma after stimulus. That mistake is going to persist throughout the script, unfortunately.
Okay, and that what
So do you see stimulus and then like
Yeah.
we're right here?
welcome
there
to
should
the
be-
experiment.
Yes, there should be a comma just because it's not the last parameter that we're using. If you notice, there's a comma after the type, there's a comma after stimulus. There doesn't need to be a comma after choices because it's the last one.
Wait, I'm sorry, I'm trying to manage looking at everything. So, okay, so I have the comma at the end of line 26 that I have to add. Is that correct?
Which should be stimulus. Is that the same line?
Yes.
Yep.
So there needs to be a comma at the end
Yep.
of that.
And you
Okay.
replaced the file path,
File
right?
path.
When you copied everything over from the notebook viewer, you replaced you called the JSPsych from your own computer and not from the file path that was on, right?
Oh, I don't know. It's okay. I don't want to hold up.
No. This is literally
it's
like
fine.
what this is for.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it should probably be like line 5 and 6 for you, where it's like script src. You just want to make sure that like that file path, because the file paths that are there currently are what was on Steven's computer,
Yeah.
rather than like. whatever else you
Oh, okay. So what do I have to change that to?
Yeah, you can look at my computer, like the screen, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Like, let's start with jspsych.js. I'm going to go to this JSPsych folder that's right here in your directory.
Uh-huh.
And all I'm going to do is go to the jspsych.js, and I'm going to copy the path, and then I'm just going to paste it. And it should be your desktop. Why is that looking different? Oh, why is that looking different? I don't know, but it's working for me, so I'm gonna keep it.
You might have 2 different folders.
I think I do have 2 different JSPsych folders, but it's okay.
Oh, I think I had 2 of those on there. That's why it wasn't running. And that
Well, they should
so
be.
for you for line 8 where it says link href,
Mhm.
that's, do I have to change that one too?
Yep, you want to change that to be jspsych.css. So same thing, you want to find it on the left,
Oh,
copy the path. These are all different plugins, basically.
right. Okay.
And then you would do the same thing for the HTML keyboard response plugin.
Boy, boy.
It's okay. I think we've got it.
Seem to miss this step.
It's okay.
It's okay. I'm not really sure what to do, but I'll just follow along.
Are you sure?
We're good. I'm good. Yeah. Because it's fine. Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone else
Thank
have any questions? Okay.
Does anyone want to share their screen and show that they were able to get the code to run? Trying to make sure everyone's doing it. We don't have to.
All right, I'm gonna go to step 16. So now we're gonna start building like phase 1 of the experiment. So remember in phase 1, we're gonna show images of animals to participants and have them rate how much they like them on a scale of 1 to 7. And we're gonna use a special feature called timeline variables, which allow us to loop through the animal images and the animal names, like without building a function or a for loop. And it allows us to use different plugins for different trials. So let's say we want to use the HTML keyboard response plugin for trial 1 and a different plugin for trial 2. We can still do that. So all that we're going to do is, and I think for the purposes of time, it would be just easier to copy the block of code that I put and just change the paths. At least that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to create a variable called task stimuli. I'm going to have a little tag that is called animal with the path to the animal file that should be in the stimuli folder. So if you go in the stimuli folder, there should be 4 animal images: caterpillar, clownfish, polar bear, and toucan. And then I'm just going to include another tag or object that's the name of that animal image. I'll give you some time to change the paths.
Did we need the plugins that are in step 15, or are we just skipping that for?
I missed that part. Yeah, we'll do that after. I'm so sorry.
No worries.
No,
I was just making sure.
You're fine. I just messaged at the same time. That's why I was laughing.
Let's see. So you should have 4 kind of rows with an animal with each animal image, and then the name with each. The name should stay the same if you're copying it. Oh, nice, Lindsay. Do we think we're good on that part? Cool. We are, because I missed a step, all we're going to do is load some more plugins like we've done before. It's literally the same exact thing we've done before. We just want to get the name with the correct plugins. We want to load the image keyboard response and the survey text plugin. So same thing that we did before. You want to find it on the left. After plugin, it's in alphabetical order. So like the first one is image keyboard response. And the way I do it is I just copy it and then change the path. Where am I? And then same thing for, just do it this way because it's easier. Does everyone have the additional 2 plugins loaded?
I need a moment to get them.
Problem.
And sorry, Stephen, I was thinking about something else when you did step 16. Does the position of the task stimuli variable matter? Does it have to be after run timeline? Or I'm sorry, before run timeline?
Yes, everything has to be before run timeline. Run timeline is the absolute last thing, just so that you run the experiment.
Sorry, yeah, I meant
Can you-
between push and run, but yeah, okay. Sorry.
You mean like, oh, you mean like between these two?
Yeah, or can it just be like any time before run, pretty much?
Anytime before run, like what we're
Okay.
gonna do next time is like in one of the next steps is instead of using this timeline push function, there's a different way to organize the timeline. I just want to like show flexibility in different ways to organize things.
That makes sense. Okay.
Can you please show the plugins things?
Yeah. It's the image keyboard response
Image keyboard response. Yep.
and the survey text one.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna go to step 17 if that's all right.
Yep.
We're just gonna create a trial that shows a fixation cross. I'm just gonna copy it from the step 17 notebook viewer. Put it right under the task stimuli. Same structure, right? There's a type. There's the plugin that we want to use. There's the stimulus. And we're using HTML to make the font size huge and just adjust the plus sign. The same thing has the choices parameter. This no keys thing is a specific function in jsPsych, just saying it's not going to accept any keyboard presses, so that you have to see the fixation cross for a certain amount of time. And then this trial duration knob is an additional knob that we want to turn on. We want to leave it on for 500 milliseconds. I'll give people some time to get that up there.
I'm sorry if you already addressed this, but did you skip step 15?
No, 15 was loading the plugins. I switched 15 to 16 by in order, but we should have done both of those. We should be on step 17.
No, I see that now. I think we have all those plugins loaded already, huh? Yeah.
Is everyone good on step 17? Okay. So step 18 is where we're really going to do our phase 1. We're going to present the stimuli, the animal images to participants. I'm just going to copy and paste it just because it's easier, and then I'll walk through it. So we're creating a variable called stimuli presentation. We can name this whatever we want, right? I just chose to name it stimuli presentation. In the same way you could have named variable fixation, whatever you want. It always starts off with the brackets. It includes the type, which is the plugin that we want to use. We want to use the image keyboard response plugin. We loaded that in earlier, so it should work. Now a stimulus. Normally, you could just use one path, right? The path to the animal image, if you want to show one file. But what jsPsych likes to use is this timeline variable function. Now this is going to pull the animal images, and we know that because we're including animal in the parentheses, and we're labeling the path to each image as animal. That makes sense. So it's just this trial is going to iterate over each row that has animal, each image that we assign to it.
Does it do it in the order that you have there?
It will, but there's a randomized parameter that we can apply that will randomize the order of these images.
Gotcha.
So like, yeah, keep going.
Sorry?
You can keep going. I don't know if you're going to say anything.
No, so if you don't add that argument, the random argument, you'll do it in order.
Yep, exactly. Or you can just do this, right? Fair quotes. And it'll just show one image if you want to show different images for whatever reason. We're just taking it up a notch in the sense that I think people like to have repetitive trials that show different images, different stimuli. This is the prompt that we're going to put. Again, this P paragraph to start it off, press a number 1 to 7 to indicate how much you like the image. The choices are again 1 through 7 because those are the only keyboard presses that we want to accept. And what's really cool is you can adjust the image height and width right in the software without having to do it beforehand or any like complicated code. This is, I think the default is pixels. But you can also do like 50%. You have kind of flexibility with that, or at least maybe that didn't work there. I'm pretty sure you can. Does this make sense? The stimuli presentation part makes sense? Cool. So this is kind of speaking to what Billy was asking about before. We're going to organize this phase 1 task procedure. We're going to put things together and I'm going to do it one at a time. Because you see, we don't have timeline push here. We don't have timeline push for this. We don't have timeline push for the stimuli presentation. So it's not in the experiment as of now. And all we're going to do is organize the phase 1 procedure. I'm calling it phase 1 procedure. We are using this timeline function. And now, G, this was you were talking about before, right? Like now we can put the predefined trials that we want to do as part of the experiment. I'm saying fixation, I'm saying stimuli presentation, and this timeline variables function is mapping onto this function right here. And it's using the array that we created earlier right here. So that's how it knows what animal means, because we're referencing it right here, or else it wouldn't. And then again, like what you asked before, we can just use this randomize order parameter to randomize it. I think that was a lot, so I'm going to give people some space to work through that, or if they have any questions. So it's always going to be fixation, then stimuli, fixation, then stimuli, fixation, then stimuli, for as many stimuli as there are, as we defined in the task stimuli array. And then the last thing that we're going to do is push that to the experimental timeline. So rather than pushing an individual, rather than like doing this, do you know what I mean? Like,
and why are you not including welcome anywhere?
That's a really good question. I'm glad you said that. And that's another example of like, I also named it wrong in my notebook viewer. I'm sorry, it should be phase 1 procedure. But this is how it gives us flexibility. What if we don't want to show the welcome message every single time? We don't want it to be a welcome message, then a fixation, then an image, then a welcome message, then a fixation, then an image, right? We only want to show the welcome image once. So if we push it separately, from the main experimental trials, that gives us more flexibility in that respect.
Okay, so we're pushing welcome, it appears one time, and then we're pushing the fixation and the stimulus and all.
It's like pushing it in sets. So now what I was going to do is run this. So same thing we did before. We can just save it, click the refresh button. Is it working for you guys?
Yeah, mine worked.
Cool. I think I have to reload mine. I haven't been able to try it.
So I assume you can put something there to like put the timeline on this, like they have like a sort of time to press.
Yep, exactly. There's different. I think the image keyboard response has a parameter for that.
Yeah.
Mine's not running. Why is mine not running? Give me 1 second. Is everyone else's running? Quick, just 4 animal images, then the text. Let me see.
I would like to know if people have, it says push the space bar, but in the example code, it's an A, so you have to push the A button for it to continue
That's
on.
exactly what I just did, and it wasn't moving forward, so I thought there was an error.
Yeah. That's the first thing I was like pushing my space bar. I was like, why? I was like, oh,
Cool.
it's the A button.
And do you see at the end where it shows all the data that you've collected, like right on the web page? So like that's an easy way to check what you have. Okay. Let me go back. Now we're going to build phase 2. It's going to be pretty much the same thing that we did for phase 1. Now we're going to use the name object that we created in that task stimuli array.
Mine is not even showing the welcome anymore.
Oh no. It's not showing the welcome.
No.
Do you still have the timeline push.welcome function? It should be like line 34 or something like that.
I do.
Would you be okay to share your screen just so I can see it?
Yeah, and I forgot how to find the arrow, so. So C is not showing anything.
Oh, could you right click it on the like any in the white space?
Right click and then
inspect.
Inspect.
Go to console. Oh, so this was my fault again. I named it phase 1 procedure, but in the notebook I put task procedure. So do you see line 70?
Yeah.
Should be phase 1 because that's the name of the object that we called it.
Here, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
No, it should be phase 1. Yep.
Phase 1 procedure. Like that?
Yep, and save it and run it again and let's see if it works.
Yay.
Ooh, the images aren't showing though.
Oh.
Could you go back to the code?
Oh, maybe my path is well, I didn't add it up. So that explains it.
Yeah.
My bad.
I think if you cut out everything just before stimuli, you should be good. That's probably the quickest way to do it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna share my screen as well. And just run it whenever you're ready and let us know if it's good and we can move forward.
Yeah. What is an easy way for me to find the path to my images?
If you go, are you looking at my JS on my screen?
I am now.
If you just go to the stimuli folder, same thing, you just can copy the path.
Right. Okay. I thought so. Yeah, okay. Okay, it should work after this though, so feel free to keep going.
Okay, I'm gonna go to step 21. We're just gonna build phase 2 of the experiment. It's gonna be the same exact process that we did for phase 1, basically. I'm just gonna copy and paste it here. We're gonna create a trial called memory test. The type now is a different plugin. It's the survey text plugin that we loaded in before. Now this preamble is a little bit complicated, but I kind of just want you to get what we're doing here in the sense that all we're doing is customizing the font and we're just pulling the name object from the task stimuli array that we created earlier. That's kind of all we're doing. Same thing as what we did up there for the animal. We're just adding some HTML customization to customize the font.
Okay, it worked, by the way. I have the images now.
Oh, I'm glad. And then for the memory test, we're using this parameter called questions. This questions parameter is specific to the survey text plugin, so not all plugins have it. We're saying for the prompt, I'm just saying, please recall as much as you can remember about the image of the animal listed above. And what's listed above is going to be the name. This is creating the size of the text box that we want participants to write in. Maybe we only want 1 line. Maybe we want 12 lines, whatever. The default for this, I wrote it in here, is 5 for rows, and the default value is 40. But again, if you just go to each plugin's documentation page, what I think is really helpful, and I wish more languages did this, I guess it's only specific to task, but they'll have all the parameters and then they have a demo of each plugin, which uses the different parameters, and you can just model your trial after that. Does everyone have the memory test trial loaded? Okay, so same thing that we did for phase 1. Now we're going to organize the phase 2 procedure together. I'm on step 22. I'm just going to copy and paste it. Now, this is again another benefit of organizing the timeline this way. I don't have to create another fixation trial. I can just pull the same one that we created before. And all I'm doing is substituting that with the memory test variable. I'm referencing the task stimuli array that we created that has the animals and the names, and I'm randomizing it again. Is this making sense? Now, what's the last thing that we have to do to get it to the timeline?
You gotta push.
Exactly, you just got to push it. And same thing. Push phase 2. And it goes in a sequential order. So we're going to see the welcome message first and only once because we're pushing that separately from the other sets. We're going to loop through phase 1. We're going to loop through phase 2. So there's like a lot of flexibility in how you can build these trials and use different plugins to kind of loop through what you want to do. Now, the last thing that we're going to do before we run this is we're going to conclude the experiment. So we're going to add one final trial. This is step 23. That's going to print out a message signaling that the experiment is finished. And in this one, I was going to challenge everyone to build this yourselves. You're just going to use the HTML keyboard response plugin. You're going to show them a message indicating that the experiment finished. They have to press A to exit. And then you're going to use the choices parameter to define which keyboard presses are accepted. And lastly, you'll have to push it. So I'm going to give you guys a few minutes to work through that. Hopefully the modeling is making sense.
One thing
Sorry. No, you go first. You go first.
I was just gonna say for people, when you define a variable, it'll actually give you like the stuff that you can put inside of it. So if you say you like hover over stimuli presentation, it'll show you like what you can include. So if that helps people like define the things that you're looking at, yeah. So just like as a little shortcut for people, if that's something that other people are struggling with, that I noticed. Sorry, go ahead, Gigi.
Well, that's my question was just that still goes before the last run the experiment line, right?
Yep, somewhere before jsPsych.run parentheses timeline.
Okay.
And if you just give me a thumbs up whenever you've built that trial. Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna copy mine here. I named it.
Can I have parentheses inside the parentheses, like the text? Oh yeah, I can. Okay.
Yeah.
It was like changing colors. I think you can use like double quotes, I guess.
Yep.
You only use singles.
Yeah. One thing that I forgot to mention while people are working through this is in the memory test, I included this parameter called required true, which means you just have to answer that before you go on. That's like one easy way to make that. So they have to provide an answer. They can't just skip it. You can turn that off too, or not include it if you don't want that. If everyone's good here, I was going to run the final experiment so you can see what it looks like. And hopefully this works for people. Same thing, you just refresh it or run it. It should include 4 animal images, 4 survey text, and the conclusory message. Even I in my code forgot to push it. Okay. Did it work for everyone?
Mine didn't work, and I don't know why.
Okay. Do you see my code on Visual Studio Code?
Oh, I hadn't seen it before.
This should be basically what I asked you guys to try to build. So it should just have the type, the plugin that you wanted, the stimulus, which is whatever text you want to show, and then the choices, whatever keyboard press you want to accept.
The experiment finished variable, like, can you call that anything?
Yep, you can
Or-
call it whatever you
okay.
want. You just have to make sure it's consistent.
I need to go because I have another meeting, but
Yeah,
I this was great, and I might contact you if I can figure out this last
for
bit.
sure. Let me know. I'm happy to chat.
Thank you so much.
No problem. This is basically it. If everyone got it to run, let me kind of stop sharing the screen. One second. I'm just gonna end it with the PowerPoint that I made. Is everyone able to see this here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope that we were able to set up the jsPsych script and just build an experimental trial using different languages. In terms of like what the task involved, I would just try to make this as general as possible for everyone in the sense that it's gonna have the stimuli presentation, collecting participant responses, customizing the task, and randomizing the trials. Now I know this is what everyone's interested in, is like using it online. So I have the information here. I'm not going to get into detail. All you have to do is just add 2 plugins that basically connect your script to Pavlovia. That's pretty much it. You're just loading it in like you loaded all the other plugins. You're adding a plugin to your script at the start of your script that says connect to Pavlovia, and then at the end of the script that says terminate the connection to Pavlovia. That's literally it. And then you're just able to upload it onto GitHub. So this is like, this is me just showing you that the index.html file that is in that workshop folder is the online version of our experiment in case you want to look through it. And then these are the changes that I made to this script. So you're loading in 2 plugins here. You're just adding in these trial objects at the beginning of the script, at the end of the script. That's pretty much it. And then you're just good to upload it to Pavlovia. One other thing though, I forgot I put this, is since the images are being pulled from Pavlovia, you kind of want to load them in like earlier using this preload function, which basically just like doesn't make it so that there's any lag when you show those images based on people's like computer speed or anything like that. That's the only other tweak you want to do. And then these are just some repositories that I went through that were really, really helpful for me. Yale Niv's lab has a super helpful task repository. I remember Ginny told me about this, so shout out to Ginny for that. Winston Yang has a really good YouTube series for jsPsych tutorials. The only bummer is that a lot of the tutorials out there use an older version of jsPsych, which pulls the plugins in differently than jsPsych 7. It's still helpful, but just want to keep that caveat in mind. I really don't think you need that much base JavaScript for this, but if you're like interested in, for whatever reason, Scrimba has a tutorial that I did that was really helpful just to get me a better idea of how to integrate JavaScript with HTML and CSS. And then the discussion forum, just like PsychoPy has, it's just you can ask questions. Yeah, I've asked some really, really, really bad questions and no one's made fun of me. So it's been good. That's kind of all that I had. I know this was a lot. I hope I didn't go too fast, but I hope you got some sort of idea of what the structure of jsPsych is. And I will always be happy to be a soundboard or a resource if anyone wants to like chat about things for whatever reason, or if let's say you only got to step 8 and you maybe didn't want to ask, like I would be happy to talk and work with you through that. Yeah, that's all that I had.
Thanks, Steven. This is good.
Thanks,
All right,
everyone.
great. Well, yeah, thanks, Steven. That was fantastic. That was a really, really great job. I felt like the pacing was good, really good examples and everything. I actually feel like I now know like how to get started with the JSPsych like task, and I never really felt like it was super accessible. So that's awesome. I think next week we've got Beth Smedley going over iterations and creating like custom functions in R. So like much like we are sort of like creating custom functions that like Stephen had gone over, or like using sort of like defining variables, you could do like a really similar thing in R. I use it all the time to like create like an analysis pipeline to clean data and things like that. If I've got like some function I'm going to do over and over again for like, yeah, data cleaning or anything like that. But so it's very useful. I think it's like arguably like the topics that we're going to cover in that are like perhaps some of the most important things that you could do in R, of my personal opinion. But yeah. So hopefully we will see you all there.
Thank you again, Stephen. That was really great.
I have a question, Stephen. This is like more specific to like a study that I'm doing, but so I have these videos where I'm trying to capture reaction time. So like a participant watches a video and then like hits a space bar when they want the video to stop. Do you think JSPsych would